week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio, where today we are talking about buying a second-hand boat. I'm Rebecca Caro, and I'm joined by Marlene Royal.
Hello, Rebecca, and hello to our Faster Masters Rowing audience.
So this is a follow-up episode. Last week we talked about buying a new boat and how to test a boat to see if it's suitable for you. So if you want that information, go and check out last week's episode. But today we're focusing on the reality that a lot of people can't afford the amount of money it costs to get a new boat. And so the secondhand market, which is extremely lively across nearly all rowing communities, is a really good way to go. So let's kick off with, what should I look for? Obviously, I've seen an advert. Let's assume you've seen an advert. You think it sounds about right for you. So what should people be looking for, Marlene?
Well, as we were talking about with buying a new boat, the first thing you want to look for is the boat the right size for your body weight. So that's a very, very big issue to make sure that the boat fits you correctly. What are you going to use this boat for? Are you thinking, do you want a racing boat? Do you want a more recreational single or something that's built more for open water? So that, depending on what kind of boat you're interested in, is it going to suit your purposes? What kind of price are you looking for? That's, what's reasonable? What can you afford? Do you look at something and you say, is this is this a good deal or not? So these are some just, the upfront things that you might say, wow, this boat looks good, but I don't quite want to spend that much. But, what is your budget? Just, be honest about what you're thinking about spending.
As far as right size goes, we had some discussion after last week's episode. And one of the things that is really confusing about boat sizes is boat builders will often give a range of weights. They'll say this boat is suitable from 60 to 75 kilo athletes. And you're like, well, I weigh 72 kilos. Does that mean this boat is not suitable for me? The key thing you need to understand is the height of the deck. So that's the flat bit of the cockpit where the seat and the slides are. That height relative to the surface of the water when you are sitting in the boat is absolutely critical. Often, I think there is an amount of what I would politely call a fudge factor put in there, where they make out that a boat is suitable for people at the extremes of those weight ranges, and really it is not. And what the boat builders do, and this is completely legitimate, I'm not criticizing this, is they have a single hull shape, and then they mount the deck higher or lower inside the hull to reflect the weight of the athlete. Obviously, if you're lighter, the boat sits higher out of the water, so they put the deck lower in the boat. Now, that is absolutely fine and quite sensible in terms of a boat builder who maybe has three hulls. They have a lighter, a midweight, and a heavyweight hull, and they want to be able to accommodate athletes of different weights. But from your point of view, the risk of having a boat where you are at the extremes of the weight is that you find that you can't row it in rough water. You find that there isn't enough clearance to row square blades, or there's too much, and that makes the boat feel very tippy because you're sitting quite high above the water. So as Marlene says, having the right size boat is really critical. And basically nobody ever goes and measures the height of the deck relative to the surface of the water, and we should.
Yes, and one thing you can do, if there's a boat that you're really interested in, get the serial number of the boat if it's available. I mean, sometimes if it's an older boat, you might not be able to find the serial number, but most of the time you can find a serial number because we're assuming your boat is probably going to be made by a major builder. And you can call the builder with the serial number and find out a little bit of information about that boat. Do they have the information, like what was the weight of the original owner when it was built, or what is the history of the boat? What year was it built? You can ask the current owner what they, are they the original owner? Maybe they bought the boat secondhand. Find out any information that you can about the life of the boat. If it's had any major repairs, that's something to know, because you want to understand what is the condition of the hull.
So definitely asking the boat builder will tell you the specifications that it was built to. And do know that these plates, they're little metal plates, and they're often either on the vertical part of the deck in the footwell, or up in the bows, sometimes between the V splash deck. Sometimes they wear a little bit, but take a photograph of them and do your best. And serial numbers, if the boat does not have a serial number plate on it, it's either, as Marlene said, not a major boat builder, or it was built prior to 1992. So 1992, I'm reliably informed, was the date after the Barcelona Olympics, when FISA got involved with setting standards for rowing boats. That was when they established the minimum weights for boats. So if you go and look on the FISA website, the World Rowing website, you can find that the minimum weight for a single scull is 14 kilograms. You're not allowed to race a boat that is lighter than that. You have to carry additional weights. And that was the time where it was established that boat builders would put a plate into the boat that revealed this particular, so the actual build weight of the hull, and then correspondingly, they'll often do the serial number, but also the weight of the athlete that it's designed for. So if there's no plate in the boat, that's a bit of a red flag.
There also may be some builders will actually etch a serial number into the stern or at some location. If there's not a plate, also look for a stamped or etched in number on the stern of the boat. Sometimes it's on the stern of the boat, like above the waterline. So so you might have to look around if there's not like a standard plate, but often that will give you some information about the year of the boat. But you never know what their code is. What it might be the code of the hull, their hull design or whatever. So it's always good if the boat builder is still in business, email them the serial number or call them and see what you can find out about the boat.
Yeah, so it's worth doing that probably before you go and try the boat, particularly if you have to travel a certain distance to get to see the boat. So get the owner to send you that information. Secondly, if, however, you have tried the boat, it's a very good final check that what you think you're buying is actually what it was designed for. So it's a good validation, I suppose. So what are the other questions, Marlene, you should be asking the vendor when you're buying a secondhand boat?
Well, as we talked about, have there been any major repairs? I think that's a major issue. You want to know if there's been any structural damage to the boat that's been fixed or has caused a repair can make a boat heavier. Does the boat feel significantly heavier? If it does, is that important to you? Depending what you want to do with the boat, it may not be important to you. You want to check for any type of little cracks or, maybe blemishes or cracks in a rigger, something that might look like a hairline fracture. Anything that's a red flag of something that may be structural. I wouldn't worry too much about the wear parts, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But and how much, does the owner have any idea how much the boat has been rowed? I mean, is there any idea besides, age is one thing, but perhaps somebody had a boat for 10 years and they rowed it every single day for a season, or maybe somebody had a boat for 10 years and it's been wrapped up hanging in a barn and has barely been rowed. So, the amount of kilometers on the boat, also can be, matter in terms of the wear and tear and, of the just overall condition, health of the boat.
The other thing to ask is what comes with the boat? Are they selling it on its own? Does it come with sweep and sculling riggers? Does it come with oars? Has it got a boat bag? Rowing electronics? So, it's not sometimes just the boat. It could be like a whole package.
Yeah, and that can be a great advantage if you are getting your own boat for the first time or upgrading. And, I know people who have several boats because they see a boat and they just can't resist it. So, and they like to row different boats when they're in different moods. But you might get the slings, you might get the electronics, you might get an extra pair of oars. So it can be quite an, advantage to get into the boat market by getting a secondhand boat.
And often people, when they advertise it, they will say it includes a speed coach. And it's like, well, that's, that has value in itself.
It sure does. It absolutely does. And then we were talking about the overall condition of the boat. Depending on the age, do you have to invest any money in this boat to make it the way you would like the boat to be? And
yes. So what are the things that you might consider? So I can instantly think of shoe size.
Exactly, right.
Having the wrong size shoes is no reason not to buy a boat, but you then have to spend $100 or so buying a set of shoes that are right for you.
Mm-hmm. And you may, if you look at anything that's a wear part. So if the boat has been well maintained, these wear parts may be in relatively good condition, but they do wear out when you row. So it's, if you have to put new oarlocks on the boat, you may need to put if you put a new set of tracks and new wheels on your seat, your boat and new oarlocks, your boat is going to feel very new. So these are things that I think are quite easy to change out, but you still want to find out what's the cost to replace those things for this boat, and how does that fit into the overall budget of what you want to spend. Again, the hull, the structural hull and the rigger are the most important things. Everything else, even pins, if they're old or something, can be replaced. So just about everything, or if it's got a cloth deck like some older boats do, you can replace the decking, or replace.
You mean a canvas? Canvas. When canvases were made of canvas, it's actually quite an easy job to replace canvas.
Yes, it is. And many boat builders who perhaps had made wood boats, or who had made composite boats that had soft decks years ago, will often still carry decking material that you can buy.
If you go to a chandler, it's a standard piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm. So those are things, looking at your wear parts, and as we said, are you able to test the boat and row it?
Yeah. Now, let's talk now about the red flags. What are the big warning signs that when you're actually in front of the boat, you're with it, that might make you decide that it's not the right boat for you? So let's start with the hull, because we said the hull is the most important thing. What should you look for? You turn the boat upside down on some slings. What are you looking for, Marlene?
Well, I think you want to look for any pits, any cracks, repairs in the hull. What's the condition of the skin of the boat? Does it look really oxidized? Does it look like it's something that could be cleaned up and perhaps painted if you wanted to do that? Like, just what is the general condition of the gel coat of the hull? Because maybe it's been left out in the sun for a long time and it's a bit oxidized. It still could be perfectly fine, but it just may be something along the road that you might want to take care of.
So when you're looking at pits and cracks, basically run your finger over them. If the gel coat, which is a transparent layer, it's kind of like varnish, if that has been cracked, you can feel it. So visually it might look perfect, but you can often feel it. And it's not a bad thing for the structure of the boat. It just means that the water won't flow really smoothly over that tiny little thing. Having said that, under the gel coat is paint. if the paint has been removed, you can then see the color of the Kevlar or carbon, whatever the boat's made of, underneath. And if that is intact, it's not a particular problem. It just means there's a little imperfection in the hull. The other thing is to turn your head sideways and against the light, look down the full length of the boat, and you will see shadows if there are little bumps and dents. So sometimes the honeycomb can get a little crushed if you've had an impact. And the paint isn't cracked, the gel coat isn't cracked, but actually you can see it. So get your eye right down, use a torch if you've got on your phone, and just run that down the length, and you can actually then see any imperfections. And basically you want to be alert to ones that are below the waterline.
Correct.
Above the waterline really doesn't matter so much. I'd say that was more cosmetics, as long as it's not affecting the structure.
Yes, exactly. I was going to mention that too, because you might see a little ding or a scratch or a repair, but if above the waterline, it's not going to affect the part of the boat that is actually in connection with the water, or as Mike Davenport, separating you from the fish. I like that. And but and use a little bit of intuition. I think just boats have energy, and some boats give off really good energy, and some boats don't give off good energy. Boats are handmade for the most part, and boats have different personalities and feel differently. And you can have two boats that were built by the same builder at the same time, and they may just have a different feel because they're just a little bit different. It's not every boat is a carbon copy of the previous one. Even though they kind of everything is done the same, there's still the energy of the person who's building the boat.
So when you're looking at repairs, sometimes you can see the repair, but sometimes the repair has been painted over and you can't see it. So you need to ask them, was it a minor repair? Did they do it themselves? Did it have to go back to the boat builder? Because if it did, that reflects the quality of the repair, but also the severity of the repair. Because you can have a boat repair and it doesn't show on the inside. So sometimes you can look inside a hatch cover and you can see the repair has been made. And sometimes you just can't. So it's worth asking, then it's about the honesty of the vendor as to what they say to you. But, minor repairs that maybe go to the honeycomb but don't go through to the inside, yes, they add a little bit of weight, but as long as they feel smooth when you run your hand over them, I would not say that was a reason necessarily not to buy a boat. Major repairs, though, really are a big red flag. And again, as Marlene said earlier, it comes back to what you want to use the boat for. So if you want a light racing hull, any repair will add weight to the boat, even if it's just grams. And the question is, does that really matter to you? And then it's about you and your own instincts and your principles. But it's worth knowing these things, because then you can go back to the boat builder or the repair person and say, what did you repair? It was done in this year. Can you look up your records? And they may not be able to, but it depends how much of a detective job you want to do on the boat. Assuming the hull looks good and you are confident in it, one of the things that I always look for is the V splash behind where you sit. Wobble them with your hands and feel if they feel flimsy, because in older, particularly wooden boats, they are often places that take knocks and cracks, and people whack them when they're putting boats on the rack or something. And they're not utterly essential, but if you have a capsize and you have to get back into the boat and you're worried about climbing over the side of the sax board and that it'll collapse when it takes your weight, that really is a consideration. So do look at the bits above the water as well as the bits under the water. But assuming the hull looks good, you can make a lot of DIY improvements to it. So the first boat I bought was a wooden hull that was structurally sound. I could see one repair in it. They knew who the boat builder was. One of the canvases needed replacing, but they'd already put new riggers onto it. I bought some new shoes to go on it because I think it had clogs from memory. And it was worth buying because I could then replace some of the parts to make the boat more what I thought I wanted. But I was a beginner sculler at the time, and to be honest, I didn't have much of a clue because my skill level was so low that really any boat that was seaworthy was probably good enough for me. So do take a look at the sorts of things. You might need to replace the number slot. You might need a new bow ball, particularly if it's perished. If you're buying oars, the grips, the rubber grips on the handles, might need replacing, or you might need a slightly different size if your hands are a different size from those. So add up all of those things. But those are really nice ways to improve a solid hull, but has just really got a bit of wear and tear on it. Other things you can do include getting a new paint job. Mm-hmm. You can strip all those parts off the hull, take it to a boat builder. In fact, you can take it, doesn't have to go to a rowing boat builder, and ask them to respray it for you. And if they have a paint shop, they can respray it and it'll look beautiful. And
right.
Then you can put the seat and the tracks and everything back in, and you've got what looks like a new boat.
Exactly. Yes, my first boat was also, I was a new sculler. It was 15 years old when I bought it, and at that time, the boat, it was partly a composite boat, but it had a wooden keel. It had little wooden struts inside, and it had a wooden deck frame. And so, you had to go in and make sure they were all intact and epoxy them and I painted it and put a new deck on it. And the same type of thing. Put your own shoes in it, and it's really fun doing that too when you have your very first boat.
One thing I forgot earlier when we were talking about what to look for is the hull. So I mentioned the V splash and that you can wobble it with your hands and just see how much it moves and look at the joins, because obviously it joins at the sharp V, but it also joins onto the sax board, and just see if they move. The other thing you can do is just stand next to the cockpit where the shoulders or knees are. So those are the ribs that hold the boat, particularly if it's an older design. Put your hand either side of them, and that's usually where the riggers attach, particularly if you have side-mounted Euro riggers, and literally just pull your hands towards each other and away and just see how much flex there is. Because if you've got a broken shoulder, that is a really major repair. It's not irreparable, but it definitely lowers the value of the boat and how much you should pay for it. Now, if you've got a wing rigger boat, you won't be able to do that because they don't build them with shoulders. They have a flange down the side of the boat, which is where the sax board is. But again, looking underneath the flange and see if there are any hairline cracks where that horizontal flange meets the side of the boat. And you can just still test it just by moving it, just pulling your hands together in a way and just seeing whether there's any flex in it, particularly around where the riggers mount. That'll give you a sense of the strength of the integrity of the hull. And my last point about that for a wing rigger boat is take the rigger off and then look at the holes through which the bolts go and see if they are spherical or whether they've been made a little oval through wear, because obviously that means there's play in the rigger. Again, it is an easy repair job, but it means that you're going to have to get that fixed because you don't want a moving rigger when you're rowing.
Definitely not. You want your rigger to stay on, especially a wing rigger.
So look at the rigger holes, and if you've got an older style boat, sometimes people have over tightened the wing nuts, and what you see, the nuts that hold the rigger on, sometimes you can see the bolt is beginning to pull through the shoulder and there's a little indentation in the shoulder. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, but you might want to add a large penny washer to where that bolt goes through so that it is held rather more securely against the shoulder of the ribs of the boat. So overall, any second-hand purchase is a negotiation. The vendor should have a price in mind, an asking price, and you need to then add up all of these variables. Is the size right for me? Are there any big red flags? Are there any repairs or improvements that you want to do yourself that will, add to your overall cost? And then you should also, of course, try the boat. And we talked about that in last week's podcast. But don't be afraid to ask for a price reduction and say, look, it's clear to me that I'm going to have to get this resprayed. Would you lower the price? And see what the vendor has to say. You don't have to come back with a a counter offer, like saying they want $3,000. Would you accept 2,500? You can do it like that. My rule in negotiation is always to try and get the other side to suggest the price first. So, how much would you knock off because I'm going to have to replace the skull handle grips and buy new shoes, and they may say no, or they may say yes. And so,
Right.
A friendly discussion is worth having. Haggle.
Yes. And also in your research and when you contact the boat builder, you could, if you've given the boat builder the serial number, you could ask the boat builder, a boat this age with X number of kilometers on it, what do you think would be a fair market value for this boat if it's in good condition? And just get a ballpark figure. Again, it's all negotiable, but it does, the boat builder will know how the boats hold their value, because some boats hold their value very, very well if they're taken care of. So, it'll give you a frame of reference.
Absolutely. And boat builders are extremely knowledgeable about their own craft, and they will know what the secondhand values are as well. So when I bought my boat, one of the things that the agent told me was they hold their value very well in the secondhand market. And I still have my boat. It was built in 2001. So, I don't feel the need to have a new boat at that stage, but obviously it's been reasonably well used. Some people think that if a boat has won races, that adds to the value. So this is a race winning hull.
Yes. Well, I've had my boat. My boat was built in January of 1998. So I've had my boat for 25 years now. And, fortunately, it's in very good condition. It's been very well taken care of. And, I love my boat. So
goes without saying. So some things for you to think about if you want to buy a secondhand boat. And as ever, we support everybody who wants to ask questions. Get in touch with us at fastermastersrowing.com. Till next week.
Hey.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.